you can see, there aren't that many entries because
they're busy doing other things.
They're busy doing it, but you can...
quite a few.
There are quite a few. Well, yeah, and there are quite a few, and you can...
Blew out the spinnaker.
It's things like, blew out the spinnaker, good drying weather, exclamation mark.
Shifted the beer.
Yeah.
Things like
or,
that. They
but knocked down again, beer shifted, exclamation mark.
Yeah. But the...
So
they were racing.
They were and enjoying themselves.
They were clearly having a lot of fun.
Hi guys, welcome to the Sailing Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the sea, the boats that sail on it, and the awesome people who sail those boats. Today I am on board a Contessa 32, and I'm very lucky to be here with the owners of Jessie Rogers Limited, boat builders here in Lymington, Kit and Jessie Rogers. Hi guys, how you doing?
Hey Theo.
Thanks very much for joining me today and letting us come on your lovely boat.
Well, thank you for inviting us. It's great. Lovely to show the boat off.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time I've been on the boat, and we'll maybe chat about that in a little bit. But what I really wanted to talk about today was a little bit about the story of Contessa generally, but this particular boat, Ascent, is a really special boat, and I'd love to go into her little story a bit because I think people would love to hear about that. I think it's a unique and interesting boat. So that's what we're going to do today. There's loads of other stuff that we could talk about, and we might end up going off down a number of rabbit holes, and that's absolutely fine.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. But first of all, could you just introduce yourselves a little bit, and how did you get to where you are today, owning a boatyard?
I thought we were talking about Ascent and Willie.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's slightly more surprising how I got here because I wasn't sort of born to the sea. I got here via meeting Kit. We met actually in the Galapagos, so it was kind of a sea-based theme. But so after many years of travelling at sea, we ended up coming back here, settling in Lymington, and eventually taking on the family business, which is still very much a family enterprise today.
Amazing. And what were you doing in Galapagos? What were you before you became boat builders, boatyard owners?
So I was running a whale research boat. So I spent 14 months there, and we were at
Song of the Whale.
It was actually after Song of the Whale. So it was an American owned boat run by a charity called the Whale Conservation Institute, now called Ocean Alliance. And at the time, we were actually under house arrest in Portaura. I
thought we'd get on to some good stories later.
So we had
2 minutes in.
Yeah, we had been part of our sort of remit for doing the research was also to be a bit of a not a police boat, but we were keeping an eye out for illegal fishing, which we duly reported. We came across an illegal sea cucumber camp on an island called
an illegal sea cucumber camp.
Yeah, so it was a camp.
That's a mouthful.
It was an illegal operation. So a bunch of fishermen that were camped out. They had a base on an island called Fernandina, which is completely uninhabited. Sort of, it's the largest pristine island on the planet.
Yeah, wow.
No one's supposed to go on there. Very tightly controlled. You have to get scientific permits. Anyway, we were going down this stretch of water between Fernandina and Isabella. We saw smoke coming out of the mangroves, and so we thought, well, we'd go and see what's going on. We sent a dinghy in with a camera, and all the guys there obviously ran into the mangroves. So we just filmed, and there were huge drums with sea cucumbers cooking away, and we then got back on the boat. We were a little bit nervous because we weren't sure quite how hostile they'd be.
Yeah.
Got back to Portaura and handed the tape. This was back in the early 90s to the port captain and reported it to the Parks Authority. Fortunately, we made a copy of the tape because we had a sneaking feeling nothing would happen, and sure enough, nothing did happen. We were very frustrated. They had a patrol boat which they didn't send out. They said, "Oh, it's broken down." Meanwhile, we knew these people were getting away with it. And it's a real problem. Sea cucumber fishing is an incredibly unsustainable practice.
I didn't even know it was a thing.
It's a huge market, and every single place, every island that they go to where it's fished, they wipe the sea cucumbers out because of the way that they reproduce. There has to be a certain density of sea cucumbers for them to be sustainable. Anyway, we got very frustrated. We sent our copied tape to a colleague, someone we knew who worked had a sort of environmental program in Ecuador on television. It was aired on national TV, and I mean, we had sort of raised the stakes. Anyway, we ended up getting punished. We had our passports taken away from us, and we were put under house arrest. We weren't allowed to move. Our crime was reporting this
whistleblowing.
It was slightly shaming.
It was, yeah,
and they hadn't dealt with it properly.
Anyway, so during this time, Jess came out. She was also.
Well, I'd heard about it because I was living in Ecuador for the year, and I'd heard about this story because it was quite a big thing in the environmental kind of world. And I had a friend who put me onto this guide in Galapagos and said, "You need to go and talk to him. And there's been this stuff happening. There's been this story. Go and see if you can find out." So I was making some. I was doing some recordings, making some little programs for BBC World Service, and so anyway, I bumped into Kit. Literally kind of Puerto Rico was pretty small in those days, so there was quite a kind of one horse town. Anyway, so I found him and interviewed him about this story, and then we just met for that one day, and then just kept in touch over the next little bit. Yeah.
Amazing.
So that was anyway. That was how we met.
Great story.
Yeah.
Jeremy Rogers Limited. Jeremy Rogers was your dad?
So Jeremy started the business in 1961. Started boat building by himself. He was an apprentice before that. He actually worked at Burthon's for a little bit, for a few years, and then built wooden folk boats and was really into racing, and saw this was in the mid 60s, saw fiberglass as a new new material that could speed things up, and so he saw the benefit of it. So it was very good timing for him as a young boat builder. He was in his mid-20s, and he thought, well, I could build fiberglass folk boats. Fortunately for him, the Folk Boat Association didn't like that, and they said, no, you can't call your fiberglass boats folk boats. And he thought he was really worried because he'd actually started building one for someone. In the end, it was great news for him because he changed it, ended up making a mould which became the Contessa 26. And that, of course, he was expecting to just build maybe a dozen of them. It took off, and then the Contessa 32, and sort of the rest is history. So, but it all started from wooden folk boats, really. So we've been involved. And
I have to say, Willie Kerr is very much part of that, because I think he, in terms of the whole thing, obviously it was already big. It was very successful and had sort of grown with people wanting bigger boats and, having more money in the 70s, having, 60s, 70s, having more free time. And but I think it was that whole, I think this boat particularly, and Willy Kerr, it was that sort of, just that combination of the terrible tragedy of the Fastnet and this boat surviving really well. And then kind of Willie just carrying on and doing this incredible voyaging in this boat that he didn't really, it wasn't like he shouted about it, he wasn't sort of interested in the press, but somehow it kind of created a bit of an aura around it, and I think that's really endured, and people like John Kretschmer going around Cape Horn to starboard and writing the book, and so there've been a few kind of really key players, I think, who've helped to.
Because Contessa 32 has become quite an iconic.
Well, I think that's interesting, and just we tend to, obviously we build the Contessa 32 still, so that's really significant in terms of the Contessa story, which is actually in the 70s and up until 1982 when the business went down. My father was very much cutting edge. He was always looking forwards, always innovating, and I think if you were talking about the business in the late 70s, it would all be about his relationship with Doug Peterson and the racing boats that he was designing, building, racing.
Building the America's Cup boat for Alan Bond and things like that.
So Dad was building.
Well, he was.
Doug Peterson.
No, my father was.
Yeah.
So my father was going to build Australia too, and Ben Lexon, who designed the keel, came over and lived in Leamington to help. When he was working on it initially, and that, unfortunately, economic circumstances changed, and it was so it all kind of came crashing down, and out of the ashes, it's the Contessa 32 that is remembered, but and quite right and quite rightly and endured. But actually, if he'd carried on, and of course the 32 would have carried on too. But I suspect my father's legacy would have been probably a bit different.
Yes.
His two sort of lieutenants, Bill Green and Ian King, went on and founded Green Marine, which of course built all of these cutting edge racing boats.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure if my father's business hadn't collapsed, they would have moved on to that.
And the other thing is obviously the business now is very much has different aspects to it. So we build the carbon fibre davits for the
that's the Atlas.
Yeah,
stuff,
exactly, which Kit's brother Simon designed, and we also build stuff for big composite structures or projects for military.
So the communication masts on the Type 26, Type 45 frigates and destroyers, and some minesweeping systems.
Sort of triangular pyramid thing.
Yes, those are part of it. Yes, there's quite a few different parts we make. Yeah. So if you ever look at a Type 45 or a Type 26, they're very visible. They're the big disky things, like giant.
They sit on the mast. There's a kind of big,
they call them isolation screens. It's basically to screen out.
And you can recognise the 45 because they've got that big sort of ball on top.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it sits on top of the down over Portsmouth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
So. So that's actually quite a big part of our business, and we're fortunate, and perhaps I think it's probably true of a lot of boat building businesses
and manufacturing, isn't it? To keep
in order to keep your head above water, you kind of need to diversify.
So if people aren't buying Contessas for a little while, you can
exactly.
And it's all the same skills. It's all
the same skills, exactly.
Building.
And we try and we do use those skills in different departments. So someone who might be working on a davit might be able to help out on the boat as well. Although of course, people do end up kind of getting particularly skilled in one area, but the idea is that we're flexible.
Yeah. And the great thing about the Contessa story is that it has, in fact, we're off to Holland this weekend to a kind of Contessa, a group of Contessa owners.
I love it.
So it's all different Contessas.
They sit around and talk about how great Contessas
are. And not just 32s. The thing about that's what's quite nice about some of those other, particularly the Dutch, are really.
So they're getting all the different types of boat, all the different types of Contessa that have ever been built, and they're all gathering there, and so it'll be. But I suppose what I was going to say about obviously we've got Willy Kerr and John Kretschmer who are sort of historic, but there's also a whole new wave of people like Eugenie, who's sails.
So Eugenie's writing for Yachting Monthly a little bit now. So and she's single-handing her Contessa around. She's gone around Patagonia, and is she going up the west coast of South America now?
She's amazing.
And
she actually is. I'd say if I had to find one person, she's my sailing hero because she taught herself late in life. She's a middle-aged woman. So I can I can relate to that, you know. And she's so modest as well, and she does everything very carefully and sensibly and.
But still does amazing. I mean, she's been around the horn.
That's quite remarkable. Solo.
Yeah.
In a 32-foot boat, that's incredible.
She's amazing. Yeah. So and anyway, she's just one person. We get lots of people from all over the world who get in
Well,
touch with us.
and then there's Pierre Huglot,
Well,
which is off the scale. I mean, single-handed around the world, non-stop, without an engine, averaging over 5 knots.
I know.
Wow.
Age,
So-
what is he, 64?
He's done, well, he's done
it twice now.
Twice.
Once wasn't enough.
And the boat, the boat came in both times with, I mean, 0 damage, basically. There was a little bit of chafe on,
and that's remarkable. 5 knots is average is quite good going. For
Oh my God!
It's incredible.
He was racing basically
and
220 days without
and
stopping.
to come in without damage if you're pushing that hard.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, we're talking,
it's quite some seamanship.
Southern Ocean.
Yeah.
I mean, he went very far south.
And Alfonso's just done it.
And Alfonso Pascal as well.
I mean, obviously he stopped, but even so, I mean, still extraordinary.
So let's come back to this boat and Willy Kerr.
Yeah.
First of all, who was Willy Kerr and what's he got to do with this boat?
Well, so Willy Kerr and Alan Kerr, his son, were the second owners of this boat. The boat was originally built in 1972 and was actually built for the first class captain. The Kerrs bought her in 1976 and basically raced her for the first 5 years. Did around Britain race, did very well. I think they did the transatlantic.
Yeah.
They did a couple of Fastnet, so they did 77, 79.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute.
And then we'll talk about the 79 Fastnet later, but basically Willie, who was the father, they were farmers in Devon, and he had a bit of time when his potatoes were growing, apparently. That's
what he said. That's not what his wife said.
No. But he on the round Britain, he had sort of got an eye. He'd sort of seen, I don't know, the Shetlands and thought, ooh. And he had a bit of time, so so the story goes, he thought, well, I'll head up to, Shetland. And when he got to Shetland, apparently the person taking his line said, oh, what are you doing? Where are you going? Are you off to
the
Faroes? And he thought, maybe I'll try that. And so he got to the Faroes, and then they said the same. Well, where are you off to? Like, you're off to Iceland. And he ended up in Greenland. And
as one does.
As one does. And sort of spent the next 15 years, or in fact, probably more like 30 years almost, going back to Greenland in particular and really exploring. I mean,
well, he mapped it, didn't he?
Yeah.
For the he did the cruising guide.
Well, he wrote the original cruising guides, so the RCC cruising guide for Greenland, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands, which has since been updated. But he was the first guy to do that.
So he had like a forward-facing sonar in the boat.
Yeah, he had sort of.
Well, that's so quite advanced tech on board.
He was funny because he didn't spend money on certain things, certainly not on creature comforts, but he had state of the art, forward-looking sonar.
I think most people who go to high latitudes don't particularly care about creature comforts.
Absolutely.
He definitely did.
His sort of his attitude to risk was interesting.
Yeah, I mean some of his stories are just insane. Kind of.
So
if you can hear that noise, it's just started chucking it down outside. So
we're
almost the end of summer. It feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's turning.
It's just
definitely.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So he spent time in Greenland and then thought, well. So by now this was sort of in the 90s and he was into his mid 70s or so. Thought, well, why not try the other end? So he headed down to Antarctica and spent 2 years down there.
2 years. Wow.
Yeah, well, two seasons.
Okay.
Exploring the Antarctic Peninsula. Again, a lot of it by himself, and he didn't change the boat significantly, but he did have a special dinghy made for him, and
he didn't have a life raft.
Never had a life raft.
No, he didn't, because he thought if I
these people are a bit like,
if I end up in a life raft,
I don't want to.
No.
If I go down, I go down.
I don't want to end up in a life raft. So he had a special dinghy which he could sail.
So he had and it was double skinned.
Yeah.
So it was double skinned, and the reason for that, as I said, he wasn't really afraid of things, but he did have this fear of leopard seals, and he was sort of. He had this, I think that was the one thing he was afraid of going down to Antarctica.
It's not entirely illogical.
It's not entirely illogical. No. But he had this dinghy designed specifically so that if a leopard seal attacked the dinghy, there was a chance it wouldn't go down because it was double skinned.
Yeah.
And then he headed up
So we went through the Beagle Channel, then he went out to Easter
Island,
and then up to Marquesas. That's where I remember him. I remember I interviewed him, and he told me that in the Marquesas he'd gone swimming and he'd got coral cut, and he'd got an infection, and he basically spent his trip from the Marquesas to Hawaii kind of hallucinating. Because he was taking antibiotics, but they were kind of he wasn't. Anyway, he said I don't really remember the trip from Marquesas to Hawaii. I wasn't quite. I think I was slightly out of it. It was just
it's very Joshua Slocum, hallucinating the pilot in his cockpit. After he, what was it, dodgy plums he ate.
Had
a little bit of a trip.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that.
Well,
and then he got to so then he went to Hawaii, and then
up to the Aleutian Islands.
Then he went to the Aleutian Islands. Then he decided that
they're very remote and sort of they're quite
Russia, basically.
Russia, fog.
And he nipped over, didn't he? So that he didn't he nip over so that he went over to meet somebody who was Russian, so that he could.
I can't remember that.
That. Anyway, and then he went to.
When was it? So that would have been during the Cold War.
No, this would have been. No, this would have been after. This would have been in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, mid 90s.
Yeah, probably. He went to Vancouver, and then he decided to ship the boat to the Great Lakes. That was his plan. So, and so he trucked it across to the Great Lakes, and apparently when he got to the lake, I can't remember which one it was, but. And he was, having the boat taken off, put in the water, and he said, this woman came up to him and said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing? That's a mighty small boat to take on those big lakes." And he was like, "I didn't like to tell her where I'd come from."
Yes, yeah. So, and then his final trip was when he was 85.
Yeah.
He did a last trip up to Greenland, again single-handed.
Oh no, but the first bit of that trip was that he went out. I remember asking his wife about this. So he'd got to Ireland on his own. And
this is age 85.
Yeah, I think it might have been 83 actually, but anyway, something like that. He got to Ireland, realised that he'd left his passport behind, turned round, come home to pick it up. Come back to England, had someone drive it, and then set off again. Just that's sort of
it didn't stop for a night or anything.
Literally took the passport, turned around, and headed off again.
Yeah,
that was the kind of. And then he had a heart attack, and that was when his family were like, "Okay, come on, this is enough.
Enough's enough." So So then Alan, his son, flew out with a friend, and they sailed the boat back.
Yeah.
And actually, there's an article in Yachting. I don't know if it's in
Yachting Monthly.
I think it might have been.
World, Yachting World.
No, I think
Yachting Monthly.
I think it was Yachting Monthly. Actually.
Anyway, it would have been about 15 years ago, and there's a really good article written by Alan.
Okay.
No, not written by Alan. Written by the other guy.
Oh, written by the other guy. Oh, okay. Which is, I mean, it's hair raising basically.
I'll look up what the name for the other guy is.
It's called Rites of Passage, I think. And
okay. So they very nearly, so having, I mean, it's sort of ironic that they took the boat back from Willie and then very nearly lost it. I mean, not due to, they just had terrible conditions. I mean, conditions. Alan is clearly a very, very competent seaman.
Well, he was at 79.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but they had a really rough ride back, and then the boat was put on the market, and so this would have been in 2013, I think. And the boat wasn't really advertised very well, so there were rumours that she was being sold, and someone called me up and said, it's a bit sad because she's on the hard down in some estuary
down in Cornwall, Mile or somewhere.
Yeah, and they were worried that someone would buy her for not very much just to salvage the lead from the keel or something. So although we weren't really in the market for a boat, I said to Jess, "Well, I'll just go. I'll just go down and have.
We were not.
It's a bit like looking at puppies. It's like I'll just go and have a look. I won't. Obviously, we won't. Just out of interest, because I'd actually never been on the boat, even though I was, the boat was very famous to us, to our family. Anyway, I got on board, and I mean, the boat wasn't in great shape. She was looking.
Would have been sunken on the river. I think the water had come up.
Yeah, so it was all a bit. It was all pretty. It was a bit trashed, and but I definitely.
I think maybe there were just so many holes in the boat.
I definitely had rose tinted glasses on.
Yeah.
And sort of.
You bought the puppy, and
we bought the puppy, exactly.
Yeah.
And on the way home, I stopped at Willie's farm and met Willie and his wife, and which was the first time I'd met them actually, and we had a really good chat, and it was a lovely deal because they were very keen that we took the boat on, and so it was one of those negotiations where he was negotiating me down and I was negotiating him up, sort of.
Yeah.
So it was nice.
It was a good vibe, wasn't it?
It was a really good vibe, and we took the boat on and have been restoring her since. Really, we did quite a big bit of work, and then bit by bit we've been.
So I really want to come on to that.
Yeah.
But just to jump back a little bit, this boat was one of the. Was there how many Contessas sailed in the 1979 Fastnet?
Well, I think they
32s.
Yeah, but they were the largest.
The only one?
No, there were lots.
Yeah.
They were.
It took off very quickly.
Yeah.
By 1972, didn't it? There was lots of them around.
Yeah, there were quite a few who did that.
I think
a lot of them just abandoned the race because there weren't loads and loads of 32s, but there were a few.
I think there were.
Ascent sailed.
So Ascent did the 79 Fastnet and
completed it.
Completed it. So she was the only Class 5 boat out of 57 or 60, a significant number, and
to finish.
The only one to finish, and the crew was very young. So Alan was in 23 or something, and it was basically
him and his mates.
Yeah,
and they were, I think, they didn't have a VHF radio, so they weren't fully aware of what was going on.
Okay.
Well, fantastically, we got the logbook back from the 79 Fastnet because someone.
Oh, you've got that.
Yeah, someone found it in a book shop in Falmouth or something and rang up and said, "I've just bought a copy of Heavy Weather Sailing, and inside is Ascent's logbook, and it is a 1979 Fastnet.
Inside the book.
Would you like it?"
And they said, if you buy me a new Heavy Weather Sailing.
Oh, they'd written it into the pages.
No.
It was just
the logbook was literally it was Willie Kerr's.
Yes, it was
book.
Willie Kerr's book.
Yeah. And he put the logbook in there, and he'd obviously handed it out, given it to you can see. I mean, there aren't that many entries because
they're busy doing other things.
They're busy doing it, but you can
quite a few.
There are quite a few. Well, yeah, and there are quite a few, and you can
blew out the spinnaker.
It's things like blew out the spinnaker, good drying weather, exclamation mark.
Shifted the beer.
Yeah.
Things like
or
that. They
but knocked down again, beer shifted, exclamation mark.
Yeah. But the
so they were
racing.
They were and enjoying themselves.
They were racing.
They were clearly having a lot of fun. And afterwards, there's a big report, obviously, because it was such a tragedy. And they were asked to write a report and of their account of the story. And they hadn't realised at all what was going on. They were just having fun and racing, and enjoying the ride.
Yeah. And I'm sure pretty much everyone knows about the 1979 Fastnet, but it was the Fastnet race goes from Cowes,
yes, round the Fastnet
Rock and into Plymouth.
Yes.
It's now changed to Cherbourg, but it used to go into Plymouth.
Yeah.
And there was, in 1979, there was a very intense, unforecast, or the intensity of the storm wasn't forecasted, wasn't recognised.
Yeah.
And it developed very quickly and swept through the fleet.
Yeah.
And lots of boats were either damaged, rolled, man overboards, and a number of people died.
15
people.
15
died.
who were in the race, and another 2 or 3, or might have been 19 in total, who weren't. I think there were 4 other fatalities. Other boats in the area. Yeah. So the storm.
But I think it was just one of those things that up until then there'd been the regulations were quite lax, and things had been, and the way boats were not really fit for doing
Yeah, the regulations encouraged slightly or penalised boats that were genuinely really stable, didn't they? I can't really. Was it IOR? That
Yes.
was raced under?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, that was something that, as a result of that terrible tragedy, the Contessa 32, all the boats were investigated, and the Contessa 32 came out as the kind of benchmark for stability, and that race then really sort of.
Well, particularly the angle of vanishing stability. So the idea that, and it's complicated when you talk about stability because you think, stable. I mean, actually, Contessa 32, when you step on a Contessa 32, it's not very stable. It's rocky.
Initially tender
Yeah. Because of the shape. Obviously, if you have a flat bottom, wide boat, that's much more stable. And so that's why downwind modern boats are very powerful and they do feel stable. A 32 is more like a kind of wine bottle initially.
Yeah.
And so they're sort of slightly tippy at first, but once they've tipped over, they then kind of become more stable.
More buoyancy into the water, and the heavy keel swings out to
exactly.
one side.
And
they're not stable upside down.
And they're not stable upside down. So
Like
I think the angle of vanishing stability is 158 degrees or something, whereas the average is, I can't remember, but a lot
Whereas
less.
a modern wide boat upside down would probably be
It'll stay
very
there.
stable and it'll
Very
stay
stable.
upside down.
Yeah.
Because
So
it's got a relatively light keel and a very wide.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're in those terrible conditions, which you really don't want to be, and you probably shouldn't be if you can possibly help it, unless you're going out with Yachting Monthly and Theo Stocker, in which case
that's a story for another time.
That's another time.
We have been out in this boat in 49 knots of wind, so I can vouch for that.
wind against tide.
Wind against tide in the first hours, but we'll save that one for another podcast, I think.
Yeah. So in those conditions, Contessa 32 is genuinely a very good boat to be in.
Yeah.
But
most people go through their sailing lives and
never should do. And if if you're sensible,
It depends. It depends where you're going. You don't know.
No, of
do
course
you?
not.
No,
No,
if you're
no.
off Greenland, you're not necessarily going to
Or
have a
you,
choice.
or,
No, exactly.
or in the Med, or
No.
No.
Yeah, I mean exactly. You see,
And
the Medicanes or whatever, the
Yes,
storms
yes.
coming through thermal
Yeah.
winds.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
It's not something you really plan to get into, is
no,
it?
that's true. Yeah. So
And then, in terms of the Fastnet, obviously she survived. Lessons were learned in terms of stability. Rules were updated. Things were changed. But that was one of the events that really cemented the reputation. This boat was one of the reasons that cemented the sort of the iconic status of the Contessa 32. Really.
Yes.
And probably one of the reasons that you're still building them today. And
undoubtedly,
it's not that a few weeks ago, I think it was, I sailed Freya.
yeah.
Who's a brand brand new Contessa 32 fresh out of the moulds. Not cheap, but very, very nice indeed.
Yes, exactly. So you're absolutely right. I think if there was one event you were going to pin it on, it would be this boat and that race.
Well, if your biggest concern
and the
is that the beer has
subsequent-
moved, then you're probably doing quite well in that.
Yeah. And I think also the subsequent reinforcement of that
Yes.
reputation by extreme sailing.
Well, John Kretschmer has done a lot.
Kretschmer's done a lot. People like who continue to have the confidence in their boats to go places where which are pretty hostile, and so it's that. I think it's that sort of continued testing, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which most people don't want to risk. But
And as part of that, 50 years on from the 79 Fastnet,
Yes.
Kit, you went and sailed the same boat in the same race.
Yes. 40 years on.
Was it 40? My
Yes.
maths is terrible.
40.
2019 you did it.
Yes,
Yeah.
2019. So it's 40 years
There
on.
you go. That's why I do words and not numbers.
Yes, so we did it. We my brother and I, Simon and I, and our son Jonah, who was 19, just turned 19. And actually, no, he hadn't quite turned 19.
No.
And Hattie Rogers, Simon and Reb's daughter, who's a great sailor and
She's
her
now
right.
doing loads of
Loads of
top-level foiling, super racing.
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Moth world champion and various,
It's
Yeah, quite
amazing.
formidable.
So the four of us did the race, and that was a very much a nod to 79 and remembering that, and and also, you know, a chance to sort of test the boat and test our mettle, and do something a bit. We've done lots of sort of round the Cans racing in Cowsweek, but to do an offshore race was, you know, it was a great opportunity and actually quite a big learning curve doing it on a 32. We were the smallest boat in the fleet.
Yeah. What was the experience like? What did you?
So it was a bit of everything. I mean, it was a typical Fastnet. We had. You know, we had no wind. We were anchored at one point. We anchored off the Scillies on our way back for about 10 or 12 hours in 300 feet of water. So we just
had enough line to.
We pretty much tied all of our ropes together and just kind of clung onto the planet because we were at risk of drifting into an exclusion zone.
Yeah, all the shipping.
Yes,
shipping
exactly. So
there,
there was. And there was no wind, and we knew there was a lot more wind coming in. In fact, sort of 10 hours later, we were in a gale and getting blown into Plymouth with lightning, and so we had everything. We had terrible, you know, not terrible weather, but we had, you know, typical Fastnet, the kind of Irish Sea. You know,
you're out there for long enough to have a range.
Yes, and it did take us. I think we finished on the Friday. So we arrived the morning after the prize giving, so at sort of 3 a.m.
Yes.
So, you know, we felt a little sorry for ourselves, but I think we were sort of treated a bit like the sort of David and Goliath. So we were very much the smallest boat on the handicap.
Yeah.
And that was rather lovely, actually. That Willie, it was a rather nice finish. Willie actually passed away as the boat was coming in to Plymouth.
To Plymouth, yeah.
And then they asked us, a few weeks later, whether they could take and scatter his ashes from the boat in Plymouth, which was a really lovely,
That's special.
a lovely thing to be able to do.
It was, yeah. Yes, because it still feels.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels, you know, we feel like we're sort of custodians.
Yeah, exactly.
I think with these sort of classic
boats,
that's always the way, isn't it?
Yes,
you
it is,
for a little bit until somebody else comes along.
Yes, exactly.
You can take them on.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and on that note, what's next for the boat? You've just been fitting a windlass or changing the electric windlass.
So, I mean, this it's a conversation that we're kind of always having, aren't we? What's next?
Exactly.
No, cue nervous laugh.
There's always more money to be spent on that.
Yeah, we need to. I mean, I think we definitely want to go and do. So, I mean, the boat's very much a family boat. You know, our sons. We've got 4 sons. They really enjoy using the boat, and on their own, you know, on their own account more and more.
As Theo has experienced.
Yes. So there's a sort of pull towards sort of things like Cows Week, which they really enjoy.
Yeah.
We're probably more leaning towards going off and cruising a bit, and then it's which way do you turn? You know, do you turn south and head towards the sun, or do you turn north and head, you know, to those sort of more.
It's having the time, isn't it?
It's having the time. So I mean, you know, places we'd love to go. I mean, I would love to go up to Scotland and do some cruising on the west coast and maybe go up a little bit further north. You know.
Go to the Baltic. I'd like to go to the Baltic.
The Baltic would be lovely. So you know, I really hope. I mean, we should, you know, probably not in the next year or two, but at some point have a little bit more time, and we'd love to just go a bit further afield, but quite where, not sure. But that, yes, things like the new windlass are being put in. We've put those in.
So just put a new mast in.
Put a new stick in. So that was done slightly reluctantly. So we had the old mast, which was actually not the original one. Willie put it in the early 80s. So, you know, it's a new, relatively new, but and it had steps. So it was an old Proctor mast. He had steps up the mast, which I actually quite liked.
They were really useful for going up and unhitching things that had got caught around the steps, mostly.
So racing, they weren't. It was a nightmare. Pretty much every other spinnaker hoist the spinnaker
something
got caught on the steps.
And you had the steps,
so it was no problem. But then they got used a lot.
But then the boys are now. We're hoping they're moving out of this phase, but they mostly use the steps for clambering up and jumping off the spreaders, which just fills me with horror.
Not just jumping off,
doing crazy.
Triple backflips.
Yeah, I mean, So not when I'm on board, but they take the boat off, and so
small potential for things to go wrong.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, I'd like to say I wouldn't have done the same. I probably would have done it at that age.
That at home,
don't try that at home.
No, exactly. So it was needing a replacement, but that was a sort of an extra nudge.
Yeah, I mean, the point is when we took the boat on, we knew the mast. I mean, it was it had been damaged. There was corrosion. We put double plates on it, so it was only a matter of time. And if we ever sold the boat, that would be kind of the first thing that someone would pick up on. Again, well, the mast is
very
old, and it's been been to Antarctica.
Well, exactly. I think if you're thinking at any point of doing some. That was. It felt like a bit of a weakness.
When it comes to that sort of critical stuff, sort of the sentimental value of where it's been, maybe detracts from the value.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It is an interesting one though, because we quite often get asked about masts, and it, very often, and especially on a boat like a 32, where they are kind of tree trunks, and they're not prone to failing, and they are quite expensive. So. It's
anyway
we
that's
did
a new one.
Yeah.
Last question then. When you go off cruising, I know you're thinking about whether you go south or north. If there is one place that you would love to sail, both of you, either of you, you can have separate answers. That's okay.
Yeah.
Where would be the one place in your life that you would love to have sailed that you haven't yet sailed?
That we haven't yet sailed.
Ooh.
Or is there one place that you think people should definitely go to that you have been, or you'd like to go?
Somewhere we haven't yet sailed. Well, maybe you have. I don't know. Where? Is the Baltic? I haven't sailed there.
Well, I have sailed. I sailed to there. Okay. I delivered a boat there when I was about 18. But that doesn't really going around. I think the Baltic is up there definitely.
But where we have been, I think.
Well, I think where we have been, we'd probably both agree, is the Azores. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
So that has a special place in our heart because we've been back there quite a few times. I actually sailed there first in 1985 when I was 17, doing a delivery to the States, and it's just magical. I mean, for all sorts of reasons. I mean, geographically, it's kind of in the middle of the Atlantic. Volcanic islands coming out of the depths.
After we did, we ran the boat which we did the filming on for the Blue Planet, and after that filming had stopped, we thought that's where we'd kind of sailed in lots of different places, and that was the place that we thought, we want to set up a business here and bring people to experience it, because it's just so incredible. There's so much marine life, and
they're kind of like the Galapagos. They're a very remote archipelago, so you get this sort of deep sea pelagic life, big things, big fauna, sharks, stingrays, whales, really close to the coast. You can pop out, and we would be towing underwater microphones, hydrophones, and literally within 5 minutes of untying, we'd be listening to sperm whales and might even be seeing them. So there's all of that. So there's the marine life. The islands are beautiful.
Really green.
They're very green.
It's a bit like we always said it was a bit like sort of Switzerland in terms of they had the sort of mountains and hydrangeas and
tropical Switzerland.
Switzerland and a mixture of Devon, but then just with this insane marine life.
And Pico is 7,000 feet or something, so it's even snow capped, and also the islands are so different because they weren't
one to the other.
Yes, they weren't populated until 16th century or so. So they're big old islands, but humans never got there, which is also kind of strange when you look at the Pacific Islands, and that's really just due to the water, the currents and the wind system. Sailors just never found them, but they were populated by different by different people. So the one island would be taken over by the Spanish. So you have Tercera, which is very Spanish, and they run with the bulls, and and it feels like you're in Spain. And then you go to Saint George, and that was Dutch, I think.
Dutch, yeah,
and
I
so
think
they have great cheeses there, and these islands are a stone's throw, a few miles from each other.
And they're not that far sailing. I mean, the
No.
Azores and back race, you
always-
go there and back in more or less a month. don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, so
10 days.
yeah.
It always
sailing.
feels such a waste when people say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing the Azores and back race."
Don't
Turn around and come back.
No,
you know?
don't.
Or at
yeah.
least they should change it so that it's the Azores and back with like a,
Sail out there, stay for 4 years, and come back on the next
decent
edition.
amount of time. 'cause
Yeah,
it's just
but
so much
but
to
that's
see.
also what I think is.
That's what's the
That's
charm,
also what
yeah.
is its charm, is that, and when I first went there all those years ago, you felt, and every time we've gone back, you feel like it's going to be discovered.
Yes.
But it hasn't been, and it probably won't be, because the truth is that the weather in the winter is foul. I mean, they get
Yeah, it's mid-Atlantic.
it's mid-Atlantic, and they get battered, and it's not particularly warm. So why would you fly to the Azores in the winter? And in the summer, when the weather can be lovely, obviously you have the Azores High, there are so many other places to go to, and there are no beaches there, there are beaches, but they're black sand, and they're not, and there aren't that many harbours, so cruising is a little bit more challenging, and there isn't the infrastructure, and there aren't, so it's never taken off, and that of course is also part of its charm. You go there, and
you've got enough of the sort of, it's not easy for or stereotypical holiday destinations, so it's sort of protected a bit. A bit like midges in Scotland.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely stunning if you don't mind midges.
Yeah,
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, that's probably all we've got time for now. But Kit and Jessie, thank you so much for joining us and letting us come on your boat. And I'm quite sure we will have lots of other things to talk about in other episodes of the Sailing Podcast.
Thank you, Theo.
That's it, guys. Thank you very much for joining us, for listening, watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give us a thumbs up, share it, and you can always stick in the comments anything that you think we should be talking about, or people that we should have on the podcast. Let us know. But tune in for the next episode of the Sailing Podcast. Cheers, guys.